Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Nobody Ask Me Guys show. Listen, I'm your host, Melvin Lars. This evening, guys, we have a very, very, very pensive topic for you. With us, we have Mr. Reg Kopicus. Yes, pronounce that name correctly.
Absolutely well.
Reg Kopicus. And guys, listen, first of all, let me do a disclaimer. This show is not to offend anyone, it's not to point fingers, it's not to make anyone uncomfortable. It is to have a conversation, it is to start a conversation. So, we want each and every one of you guys to know whether you're watching live or whether you are watching us on replay, is that this is not meant to offend. So, when you see the title called Whiteness, don't get offended and shut it off. Watch the program. We want your feedback, whether you're watching us live or whether you are watching us in syndication. Now, as Brother Reg Kopicus is a speaker. He's a leadership mentor. Has been a leadership mentor for 35 years. He is the executive director. I'm going to call him that for HARP Education, Harassment and Racism Prevention Education for 20 years. His focus is on diversity, inclusion, integration, and acceptance, conflict management, alternative dispute resolution. Now, he believes that diversity is a metric and inclusion is the goal, leadership is the key, belonging, acceptance, and safety are the paths. Also, he says this takes active effort from team members and employees to reach out and create community. It has to be part of the culture. The leader has to set the example. The leader, guys, has to set the example. So we all understand that. But now, allow me a few minutes before I bring Brother Reg on, is that to clarify, we will have discussion. We will talk about some things that may make some people uneasy, but we want you to hang in there with us because we're not talking about people. We're talking about situations. We're talking about things that occur within our society, possibly some things that have occurred in the past, and some things that continue to occur in the present. So I want to make it crystal clear that this is not a conversation to point fingers. This is not a conversation to belittle anyone. This is not a conversation to attack anyone. It's a conversation about being human beings. It is a conversation about the name of the show. Nobody asked any of us. We just awakened one day and all of a sudden we realized that we were persons. Now, obviously, we had parents and obviously, we were taught different things and all of that, but we had no choice in the process. So, with that said, guys, sit back, relax, and we want you to meet Brother Reg Kopicus. Brother Kopicus, good evening, sir.
Thank you very much, Casey. Pleased to meet you. And as you said, and I'd like to point out as well, I'm going to speak from what my life experience has been and my observations. I'm not here to tell anyone how they should be or what they should do because everyone has their own experience. But I'm going to relate what I've learned from my own experience, from reading and from talking with other people and real situations. And maybe something I say will resonate with you, and I hope it does. Maybe something I say and you'll say, that doesn't work for me. That's fine. If it doesn't fit in with your life experience, that's okay. We're all on a growth mission. I assure you, like I'm pushing that retirement age. I'm learning all the time. I've been reading a lot of people on LinkedIn this past year, especially. I've been reading a lot of posts from people who work in the diversity and inclusion group. I've been reading a lot of information from Black practitioners, and I have learned a lot of stuff. And I've been doing this a long time. Like when you want to talk about working inclusion, I didn't even know it, but I've been working inclusion for 40 years. There's a long history there, and it all builds and it all builds. And someday we're going to get to a point where we don't have to have these weird discussions anymore. We don't have to have weird programs anymore. Eventually, everything's just going to work. I just hope to live to see that day.
Wow, very pensive. Listen, let's just get this thing off and let me ask you, let me put you right on the spot.
Excellent.
I know when you and I talked about, you said, well, you said whiteness. You said, that's And then I said to you, I said, yeah, I want to talk about whiteness from the aspect of in and you've already educate us very well by sharing your experiences and that you're not trying to tell anybody what to do. But in your experience and in the vernacular that we receive, quote, the word white, I say the same thing about black because I tell people all the time, I have a poem called Being Black is More Than a Costume, but that's not the show tonight. But we'll talk about that. So when it comes to whiteness, as a gentleman, that would be described by the world as white. What would that say to you if someone asked you to describe what whiteness was from your experience from day one to now?
And it's an interesting start, and I'm glad you did. When you first reached out to me, a week ago, to say, "Hey, are you interested in having this conversation?" Um, it kind of caught me off guard because I had to look at, okay, we're going to talk whiteness.
Yeah.
What is it? And I'm trying to think about it, and I've been thinking about it. And what I liked was that you and I spoke briefly yesterday because you gave me a call so we could talk for 5 minutes, and we found we talked for an hour, and we
Hour and a
had
half.
we had so much to talk about. We didn't get finished, but we figured we better save some of that for tonight.
Right.
But so I had to think about it. Okay, what is whiteness? And I started off, okay, well, what is blackness? Because we
Yeah.
have that conversation, like we see it in the movies. So
Yeah.
I know who rappers are. What's the white equivalent of a rapper? Is that the polka player? Is that the bagpipes guy? What do white people have? Um, it's almost like white people have decided they're just not going to be cool. You got black people, you got Motown, you got rap, you got soul. We got bagpipes and polka players. Like Eminem, he only sort of counts, doesn't really, kind of. So what is whiteness? And is whiteness blandness? And in some ways, it is in a way because I had to think about it. And if you ask me, what's it like to be white?
Mm-hmm.
And the response is, I don't think about it at all.
Okay.
There's nothing to make me think about it. Like, and I suppose, maybe a black person might say, "Wow, I'm dealing with something racial." That's
Mm-hmm.
This never happened to me. This is
Mm-hmm.
outside my experience. I have never had anything happen where on a daily basis I have to deal with something because of the color of my skin. I don't walk
Mm-hmm.
down the street and have someone call me a name. I don't walk into a store and have someone eye me suspiciously. I might follow the black guy around the store putting stuff in my pockets because I know who's watching the black guy is all the security cameras. I'm good, right? Because being white, you have automatically been given that pass card. You're safe. You're law
Mm-hmm.
abiding. You're good. There's no preconceived notion that I'm going to do something. And I think that's not everyone's experience, but certainly black people, I think, get that bad end of the rap and that kind of a thing. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking to you from Canada, just for everyone out there. My experience growing up white is probably vastly different than an American growing up white. I did work in Florida for 3 years at USAF, go Air Force. Um, and so I had some experience working with American white and black people and Latino or Hispanic, whatever word we're using nowadays, man. We keep changing the lingo. And I saw certain differences in our society. Like if we want to talk about the difference between our countries, that's a whole different show. I can point out a few, and it's challenging to find that, but there is some. So I have some of that experience. I know all the proper context and how to say y'all. So, I did learn. I confused my colleagues when I would come into the room and say, "How y'all doing, A?" And they weren't sure what to do with that either. So, but what I came to, after talking with you and I thought about it a bit, whiteness essentially is your past to be oblivious to the world and oblivious to everybody. Because if something doesn't impact you, you don't notice it. Now, if there's a black person having a problem, how am I going to hear about it? I'll see it on the news because the police are arresting someone or the police are beating up on someone. Oh, that's tragic. That's sad. But it doesn't impact me directly. It doesn't impact my family directly. Now, because it's all entwined in the socioeconomic system of America, there's probably a cost, but we don't see it. So there's no incentive for us to address it or do anything about it. So I think it's the passive being oblivious. If you have two guys walking down the street carrying a weapon, and one's a white guy and one's a black guy, you've got two very different scenarios there. But why? What's driving that? You look at the white guy and you make certain assumptions. You look at the black guy and you make certain assumptions. They're doing the exact same thing. They can carry the exact same weapon in the exact same circumstances. But your police are going to approach it differently. Other citizens will approach it differently. And that's part of what we have to address. I don't know how necessarily. You and I having this conversation is maybe a start point. And like you said yesterday, I asked you, what's the tenor of the show? How do you want it to go? And you said the thrust is there's this conversation that people don't want to have. You and I are having that conversation, and that's our start point.
I appreciate that, Rich, because I often ask, and thank you for that. I often ask the question of people when I ask about whiteness. That's why I title this, whiteness a paradox or a state of mind. Because I often ask people, friends that I have, is that, have you really convinced? I'm very serious with you. I said, have you really convinced yourself that because your skin has less melanation than someone else's, that really makes you superior? And then I get it. Well, I said, and I said, I'm just talking as you shared. I said, I'm just talking about my experiences growing up in the South. I said, so then if that's what you believe, then you have failed miserably. And I don't say it to piss them off, but I say it to be very honest. I said, if that's what you believe, you have failed miserably. Because if your whole premise is that simply by the virtue of the fact that you have less melanation in your skin, but you have not taken advantage of all of the things that were set before you, then you fail miserably. And of course, we get into long conversations about academics and housing and all of that. But I like to break it down from this standpoint, Rich. I ask people all the time, do they watch Westerns? And most people light up to go, oh yeah, I love the Westerns. I said, now understand, history, the narrative of history is not written by people of color. I said, it's written by people that are described as white. I said, so your history, even in your Westerns, you have the cattle baron who hires gunfighters to run people off of land, but he's supposed to be high, upstanding citizen. You have gunfighters who are heroes to this day, but they're criminals. But they are made into heroes. You have bank robbers who are heroes to this day, but they're criminals, but they're made into heroes. Right here in Louisiana, in Arcadia, Louisiana, which is less than 45 minutes from where I grew up, you have the Bonnie and Clyde Museum, which they were criminals, had about, I think it was 50, 60, 70 bullet holes in them. They went across the country robbing banks and stuff like that. I said, and none of those people I'm talking about look like me. I said, when did we become the criminals all of a sudden? That's where I can't get people to have a conversation, Reg. That's where I can't get people to have a conversation when we start talking about slavery in and of itself. Well, and I'll tie this up with this. I asked the question very simply. I said, when you read excerpts by people that are identified as white, and we being identified as black, and you have some ministers, people say, oh well, they're lucky because we rescued them, and they're lucky to be in America, and they don't like America. They should go back here and go back there. I said, what was the premise of enslaving people and bringing them to do your work anyway? You
Right?
are the one that tells the world that you are so hardworking. You are the one that tells people that you are so industrious. You are the one that tell people you are so intellectual. So why would you need to go any place to quote steal human beings to do your work, to build your buildings, to be architects, to be ironsmith persons, and the list continues. So as we were talking yesterday, and as I'm saying now, is that the reason I want us to have, and you've done a beautiful job. I thank you for starting off the way you did when we talk about whiteness, is the fact that I still, and I'll go back to my original answer, my original question. I still am waiting, and I do consider these guys friends. I would be a hypocrite if I say I didn't. I mean, we get along well, we respect one another's opinion, and we share, we visit one another the whole nine. But I'm still waiting on someone to say to me that I do not consider the fact that, and that's why I'm turning my hand around here. I do not
Right.
consider the fact that because it's less melanated, that's what made me superior. But I have yet to hear anyone say that. And the people are referred to the Bible, and I'll say this, and then we'll move further with that. And I ask one simple question. I ask people all the time, "What Bible are you reading?" I said, because every Bible that I read, it talks about, and I know we all love the Ten Commandments, and it says Moses, and it says Pharaoh, let my people go, and it talk about how the Red Sea parted. I said, where's the Red Sea? On the continent of Africa. So and I'm not going to get into that whole scenario, but I keep asking the question that if you really believe that the Bible supports slavery, how do you think that got in there? If the Bible's, and I tied that in when I talk about the Red Sea and Moses and the Hebrews and all of that, and I said, if the Bible scholars of the world say to you that, and if you look this up, you'll find it, Rich, that the most accurate Bible is the King James Version, and it is only 97% accurate. However, you have what's called the Apocrypha, which are other books of the Bible that were not, quote, canonized by the Catholics, who we
Yep.
know organized crime people. So who determined? Who changed stuff? Why is it only 97% accurate? What's wrong with the other 3%? How did the other 3% get tainted? In the Apocrypha, because it's not, quote, canonized. Now what do we say? So that's why yesterday when you and I were talking, and as you're sharing me now, when I say if we stop as human beings and have a conversation instead of an argument, all of us are intelligent, and it can help us all start the process and start to think. And while I spend time, the universal I, not the personal Melvin Lars, and not the personal Reg, but the universal Reg and Kente, and oh wow, man, we got some great people coming in. And if we stop and have the conversations we're having now, then possibly we can move forward in this world.
And that would be great.
Mhm. So, you know, let me ask this. I put together a group of questions that we talked about, and I have actually questions before, Reg. I told you I used to instruct in the Institute for Healing Racism in Saginaw, Michigan. We have Institute for Healing Racism, and one of the questions that I would ask was, how does your personal hatred of individuals and or groups of individuals that are just ordinary people, just like you, affect your daily lives? And I know I'm not asking you that question, but if you were in that room, what do you think most of them said? Now, these were people that weren't used to being around, quote, minority people. They were professional people. Their companies, because I want to give you a little background, their companies were sending them for racial sensitivity training.
Right.
And with your experience, I know you're in Canada, and you're right. So some of the, quote, white people, quote, black people, may interact a little differently. What do you think most of them said? What was and I read the question again. How does
Yeah.
your personal hatred? How does your personal, and I use the word hatred on purpose because I was hoping someone would say, whoa, wait a minute. Doesn't mean I hate anybody, but nobody stopped me. And I use the word hatred on purpose. It says, how does your personal hatred of individuals and or groups of individuals that are just ordinary people, just like you, and after we're talking about the universal you in the room, affect your daily lives? And then I asked them to explain.
Right,
How
right,
do you
right.
think most of them address that?
See, now in Canada, you'd probably get a response sort of like, well, I don't hate anybody. And
Yeah,
if you point to a specific group that's different, the next response would be, I don't know anything about those people.
yeah,
So it's kind of hidden in that. They'll come right out and
yeah,
say, well, I don't dislike them, but that's because I don't know them. And that becomes part of the initial discussion of how do you break down any barriers to communication or what's stopping communication. And I'll give you an example that I did have. So I'm at work, and I work with a lot of immigrant men. I work with a lot of
mm,
men from India and Pakistan, Middle East, Africa. Um, and it's very easy to say you meet a person and they have a strange name, they have a different religion, they come from a different part of the world, they eat different food, they have different experiences, and it's very easy to say I don't have anything in common with this person. And as soon as you do that, you shut down any opportunity to try and figure out what you do have in common, because you've given up, you've stopped. It's easy, it's lazy. And that's part of, as I said, being white is kind of being oblivious. If it doesn't impact me, I don't worry about it. So I was working closely with one guy. We were sitting in the next cubicle, and we kept ourselves. He was a nice guy. He was from Pakistan. He was Muslim, and we did our own thing. And his English was good, but it wasn't his first language. It also wasn't his second and third language. So he's vastly smarter than me. He's speaking, it's his fourth language, for goodness sake. So I had to kind of think to myself, well, what do we have in common? So I thought about it. Okay, well, we're both men. We now both live in Canada. We have similar education. We're doing the same job. And I thought about it a bit more. And we have a house. We own a house. We're married. We have family. We bitch about our taxes. We worry about bills. And we could find things that to start talking to each other. And it started to break down any of the barriers that might be there. And then I became more comfortable asking him what it was like back home in Pakistan. Um, Ramadan is coming up. What do you do for Ramadan? What is at the end of Eid Mubarak? What do you do for that? And we started talking about family. And you're never sure if it's polite to talk about family, but
right.
everybody loves to talk about their family, right? So sorry. So we did that. And he was complaining to me one day about, his daughter wasn't respecting his car and taking it out and whatever. Just the same regular, ordinary guy. And he's lived in Canada for 20 years. So he's Canadianized and Westernized, but he still has family back in Pakistan. And I talked about, oh, do you send money back home? He said, oh, yeah, I send lots of money back home. I said, well, why do you do that? He said, I don't want them to come here because then I'll have to support them. Oh, okay. I could understand that. It makes perfect sense to me because there you go. So just as we talked, and over the process of a year, we got a bit closer, and we could have conversations that were a little more personal, and we'd actually start telling jokes to each other, and it was really really nice. The other thing I found dealing with working with men who are Muslim, the power of just making an effort. And the one effort I made was, what's your greeting when you see them in the day? What's your greeting? So when I see Jawad or I see Babar, I would say, Assalamu alaikum, and that's all it took. I know exactly 2 words in Arabic, and and their eyes light up and they come right over and they shake my hand. They say wa alaikum assalam, and then we have a very nice conversation. And that's all it took. You don't have to be good at it. You just have to try.
Yeah, yeah. And hey, man, excellent answer. I love that. And that in and of itself, as all of us know, you know, we have slogans and we say things that we're better together, and obviously we are. If we really just you don't have to look far to see that we're much more alike than we are different. But we try so hard to pinpoint all of those differences. And as you share that, I often think about the fact of just what you said is that how we run away from people. Actually, please allow me to say this. I say to my wife all the time is that we run people away from God in the name of God. And people look at me strange when I say that. I said, but think about it now. We love to talk about God and his son Jesus. I said, but you never saw Jesus discriminating against people. He was walking around dealing with, quote, the lesser of the land and trying to heal people and trying to grow people and that kind of thing. Yet we hold on to this that we're such Christian, but we act nothing like Christ. So, and I'm serious. And I've had people, Reg, I've had people to get really angry with me when I say that because I honestly, and I share that because of what you just said. Initially, we understand there was a discomfort, but you took it upon yourself to at least give a welcoming arm or welcoming voice where probably, obviously, that's all they were waiting on because you've already said it. Many times people are uncomfortable in situations and they don't want to offend or they don't want to come across as being pushy or come across as being a smart, you know what, and that kind of thing, or it's sad to say, but it's true, or invading someone's personal space in the workplace or whatever, even though you're not talking about a physical personal space of being of next to the person, but their personal space of just the workplace itself, and that kind of thing. So, man, that's critical, and that's crucial as to what you're sharing, and that's what we try many times to in his Institute of Healing Racism is to get people to understand is very simply. Well, allow me to talk politics for a second. I never talk politics, but I will tonight. You asked a question that I do talk about this all the time about healthcare. It's like, what is your problem? You don't want other people to have healthcare. That's this. That's the dumbest thing to me in the world, Reg. If I want my family to be protected, I want my family to be able to get medical care, see the doctor by the appointment, or if they need to go to the emergency room, the whole 9 yards. But I sit in a position where I can make a decision whether or not your family receives that same situation. And then I vote against it vehemently. And then I start trying to put dollar amounts to the health and welfare of your family. However, the same dollar amount I try to put to the health and welfare of your family, I'm living off of not only your family, but millions of other families that are paying taxes and doing other things. And I often ask people, how hypocritical is that? I ask people to really explain that to me. You want the best health care, and we're all familiar with the umbrella that covers everything and all of this stuff. You want it. You want it for your wife. You want it for your children, but you don't want it for other people. That to me, when we start talking about, and when I ask the question many times to get back to my original topic, when I ask about whiteness, that's why I say, is it a paradox or a state of mind? Because you have so many people that fall under the umbrella of whiteness that are not in a privileged sector. And they have the same issues that people that look like me have. But the hierarchy of the whiteness are still trying to press and oppress others that quote whiteness unquote because they are not, what word am I looking for? Because they are not in the higher
They're not in the
echelon.
same society strata.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I've read and heard American people talking, and it's if you have a powerful person or politician or a rich person, you'll listen to that person and you'll follow what they say, even if it's not good for you. And I've seen that, and we have that here too. We have that here too. And I think part of it is the difference in how our countries grew up. America was very revolutionary. They threw off the yoke of royalty, where Canada went the opposite way. We liked having royalty. We kept that. And then after the Revolutionary War, you had the traders who left the United States. They came to Canada. We call them the loyalists because they were loyal to the crown. So Canada grew up as a country more conservative minded, I think, the United States. The United States was more revolutionary. We want less government. We don't like taxation. And Canada more, we rely on the state to help take care of us and to help provide for us. We understand
Mhm.
there's a trade-off. We pay a lot more in taxes, but we have a healthcare system that we're fairly proud of
Yeah.
in comparison. Uh, as I said to you yesterday, I don't know of a single person who's had a heart attack and then lost their house.
Okay.
There is no such story here in Canada.
Okay.
Whatever you need, that's what you get. Now there are limits
Yeah.
to, to limits to any system. You might complain because you get a bill for the ambulance that took you, and that might be $600 or $800. So you hope you have supplementary coverage for that. But once you get to the hospital and they're doing a heart operation on you, there's basically no extra costs that fall on you from that. You might have to pay for medication later on, but your medication rates are going to be vastly lower than what Americans pay. That's why you have all the old people in Minnesota and Wisconsin going across the border and buying their medications in Canada because it's a quarter or 1/10 of the cost.
Yeah.
So we expect the state to provide for us, much more so than on the American side, where you have more of the myth of individuality and ruggedness. And, if you work hard, you can be successful. And you start off, everyone is equal, but everyone isn't equal. And that's the
Right.
myth. That's the myth.
And you're absolutely correct. But see, again, Reg, th- this is why it's critical that we have this conversation, because you can't get people to have that conversation. Land of the free and land of opportunity and all of that. For whom? And that's why I said earlier, and I say that's another show, but that's why I said earlier when I said, when I wrote this poem called "Being Black is More Than a Costume," because people of color, well, oh, I'm black and I'm proud. Good. But what are you contributing to society? What are you contributing? And people say your people. And my mentality has always been, if again, Reg, I do refer to the Bible a lot when I'm talking to people, not scripture and all of that, but I like to keep bringing them back to one simple point. If we believe that God is God, and God tells us that He has no respect of person, there should be no other God before me, and He made man in His own image. What is the confusion? So when it comes to, when I said about the poem, and I was telling black people, hey man, that sounds good. I'm black and I'm proud, and I certainly am. However, what do you contribute to the society? And it's not about to my contribute to your people. What do you contribute to the world? And here in America, people of less melanation love to say, well, you're a credit to your people. Well, hell, you're my people too. If you say you believe what you believe, if you say you believe that God is here, that God made man in His own image, God has no respecter of person, and there should be no other God before me. So if you're not trying to make yourself a little God, God has said there'll be no other God before me. He has said that He has no respecter of person, and He has said that from what we understand in the Bible, when it talks about when He started in Genesis, how He scooped up the dirt and blew there nowhere in that Bible will you ever find that He went to this beach and got this color of sand and created this man. Then He went to another beach and got this color. So it's things like that when I have conversations about human beings and about color, blackness, whiteness, etc., that people refuse to talk about because they know they don't have a valid argument. And I have an uncle, God bless his soul. He always say the truth will always withstand an honest investigation. And if I can revert back to my first question, that's why I would start off asking that first question about the hatred and about people that you don't even know, and about the decisions that we make. And may I say this to you, and ask a question in turn. You said something that was very strong. Well, everything you've said has been strong, but you mentioned the fact. You say, well, it doesn't affect me. I'm looking at TV, and I, may see the cops arresting somebody, and this, that, and the third. And most of the time, if people be honest, those people they see being arrested look like me. And they trust the police. And research tells us over and over and over how they plant drugs on people that look like me, how they profile you, and the whole nine. But people that don't look like me just accept the fact that the officer is just doing his job. So
Sure, and it's same in Canada. If I'm going down the highway and I see the lights in the rear, back of my car, I pull over. I know I've either rolled through a stop sign or I'm going too fast, and that's about it. And I know the officers are going to come to the window and talk to me about it. But I never have fear. That never hits me. That feeling of fear.
yeah, and see, as I hear that, Rich, allow me to say this, and not being cocky, but see, that is what bothers, especially black men. When people say, "Oh well," they fear that. Yeah, don't fear you. Not you, the person you. We don't fear you, man. We just know the bull crap that you do, and the fact that if I whip your behind, then I'm going to jail or I might lose my life. So people use that word as fear, as if that is something that you've instilled in this person is don't mess with me. And quite frankly, it's just the opposite. Because I'm telling you, man, I'm telling you over and over and over again. And that's why I tell people sometimes, if you could be a fly on the wall, and if you involved in conversations of people of color, fear is the last thing that's happening. What's happening is the person is trying to ensure that they get back home. They're trying to ensure that their family is not now accosted in the whole nine. And knowing full well, now this is going to sound very cocky, Reg, knowing full well that if the situation were on even keel, that it'd be a whole different scenario more often than not. And you become accustomed, you become accustomed to the fact of, okay, what do I do? Do I let my ego overrule me right now and whip this guy behind? Or I'm gonna use God again, or do I trust that God is gonna protect me to just chill out and trust the man to do his job? So there is so much back and forth there, with honesty, with integrity, and that kind of thing. Which was another piece that I'd like us to talk about a little bit too, is that we talk about honesty and integrity and how we get hung up on the fact that if a man is wearing a suit and a tie and a white shirt, he is somehow perceived differently than a guy in a shirt and open collar or a round collar.
Right.
And we categorize crime, white collar crime.
Right.
Reg,
Exactly.
no problem. I'm telling you, man, I laugh all the time about when I hear that white collar crime. When did crime get dichotomized?
Well, and it's got the word white right in it,
Yes.
right? Because you look at the average black, normal black guys who are just going to work.
Yeah.
And like I said before, you look at a white guy and you have certain expectations. You look at a black guy and you have certain expectations. So the white guy, and he's wearing a tie. Well, he's going to an office. No, maybe he's a businessman. Maybe he's a lawyer. You look at a black guy, he's going to work, but he doesn't have a tie on. Does he work for the city? Does he drive the garbage truck? You don't know that he's a lawyer. You don't know that he's a CPA. You don't know these
Mm-hmm.
things because you haven't investigated into it. Maybe his tie's in his briefcase and he's going to put it on when he gets to the office. You don't know these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And that leads us into um, how the structures in society and business, the things that happen on a regular basis, because that's easier. That's just how the world works. But everything has been set up that way for the past 80 years by business people, majority of who are white people, like the wealthy
Mm-hmm.
business owners are majority white, I would say, in the United States. And
Yeah.
they set the boundaries and they set the uniform for work. So if I'm hiring someone and you come in, depending, if you come in dressed like you are, I might say, well, for our position, we need someone who's going to be dressed a little more professionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to say anything else. You probably
Mm-hmm.
know that you probably just dropped a couple spots on, you just dropped a couple
Yeah.
of spots because you're not wearing the uniform of the
Yeah.
white business guy who's
Yeah.
hair like this. Now, in all
Yeah.
honesty, keep in mind, I've been in the military for 40 years.
Okay.
My hairstyle has not changed in 40
Okay.
years. A good hairstyle will last you decades when you're a guy, right? But short hair, shirt and collar. I don't have any tattoos. I don't have any piercings. It's only a couple years I've been going with this, but it's the white people who have set up what you look like at work because what's professional, what's conservative, what's tasteful. And if you look like, okay, so Casey, if you look like me, you're going to have a better chance,
Yeah.
right? And this goes back to now black women. I'm sure the majority of black women who want a decent job working for good money for some white guy are probably doing all kinds of things to their hair to tame it down and fit in. That's the other key phrase. These are all phrases of control. That's all control. How are we going to make the
Mm-hmm.
black person look? How are we going to make them talk? How are we going to make them function in our work environment? Why are you not selling to black people too? Do they not have money? Well, of course they do. So who's reaching out to that target audience? If I was a smart business owner, I'd have a cadre of people who are reaching out to the black people, and I know nothing about it. So I need them to take the lead and do that. I have to trust that they can do that for me. I need to bring them in and make them part of my team. I need to make them belong. They need to be included. I need their help. I need their advice. I need to shut up and listen because I got one mouth and two ears. That's what I need to do. We're going to have I would come in, I would bring in all the ladies. I use the term ladies. And we'd say, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to have a conversation about ladies. In fact, we're going to have a conversation about ladies' hair. And we're going to have a conversation about black ladies' hair. And what I would say is the days of a white guy telling a black lady how to wear her hair are gone. You all tell me what's the level of appropriate, and this will be the last time we talk about it. And you guys take care of yourselves and come to work, be yourselves, do a good job, and we'll all be happy. And I think that'd be groundbreaking for some people. I've read, sorry, I've read some of the stories. I've been going through LinkedIn. I'm reading stories from black women who are complaining that people touch their hair. I do not understand why people are touching their hair. I don't know if it's an American thing or what. Coming from Canada, I've never once heard of this happening. Now, maybe in the East, maybe in Toronto because they think they're New York, that kind of thing. Like maybe more. I don't know why this is a thing. But what you have is that black women who feel they can't wear their hair the way they want to, so they're not bringing themselves to work. They have to fake it somehow. They're not themselves. They're not their best person. They're doing it because, and they don't want to, but they feel like they have to. And that's hard on people. It's the same when you talk about people who are gay or trans. They could be in a work environment where they're not sure if everybody's comfortable with, working with gay people. They can't bring themselves. They can't wear the clothes they want. They can't talk about their spouse. They can't talk about their kids. Everybody loves to talk about their family.
Mm-hmm.
It's just friendly.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the things that hold people back. They're coming to work, but that's not all of them. And you're not going to get your best out of people if they can't bring themselves to work. Every business owner should know that.
Mm-hmm. But see, sadly, you have to care. And you know what, Reg? As you share that, and another conversation we can't get people to have, and we'll cut it off after this. I don't want to. We're almost at 45 minutes. I don't want to go quite this long. Another conversation you can't have very simply is that everybody is familiar with Black Wall Street. Everybody's familiar with the bombings in New York, Oklahoma, where you have these African American neighborhoods that were doing great things, and then your own country comes in and bomb and tear it up and ruin it all the time, saying, oh, well, they're lazy, they're shiftless, they don't want to do anything for themselves because they can't stand the competition. And everybody acts like it didn't happen. Now, and even now, there are some all black cities. As a matter of fact, I used to work in one, and my wife and I both, they're in Michigan, Muskegon Heights right now. I mean, the whole town's black, the mayor's black, the school system, everything to this day. Richwood, Louisiana, same thing. What's that little town? Another little town in Michigan, Idlewild. So there are many of them still around. So as you share what you're sharing, when we talk about the workplace and the hair and things like that, everybody is intelligent enough to understand that business owners obviously have some rights to say how you look and what you do, etc. But no one wants to talk about is that all of these cities that were employing people that looked like you and that were striving were destroyed by the American government. And so when you look at people saying, well, they should straighten their hair and it's distracting, and you hit the nail on the head. I still ask questions to this day. What's distracting? You're supposed to be doing a job. Why are you looking at my hair? If you're a school teacher, you're supposed to be teaching. If you're a banker, you're supposed to be banking. If you're working on Wall Street, from all the movies I've seen, I've never worked on Wall Street, with all the chaos going on Wall Street, how do you have time to watch my hair? All of these little hidden prejudices that people try to use to eliminate, minority people. And that's why I want, to start a conversation about whiteness and then take it from there. And I see it every day. As a matter of fact, Greg, I gotta tell you this story. In this book right here, Dying on My Feet, I was in the forced integration segment here in Louisiana. I had been in Charlotte Mitchell High School for 10 and a half years. They closed all the black schools, sent us I went to Airline High School. Some kids went to Bossier High School, some went to Parkway, some went to Benton High School. But my point being, even the black teachers would always get on us about getting homework, and they better not see you walking down the street without books and the whole. Listen, we had one teacher, and I'm gonna call his name, Mr. Ivory Carr. If he saw you walk, and at that time they could still use the Board of Education, if he observed you walking to school, walking home after school without carrying some books, and you were in his class, you got the Board of Education, buddy. So to get to the part of the story I want to tell you, when we get to Airline High School, 1,500 plus students, grades 9 through 12. We're in a senior English class, four of us. One incident already, because I live in a city where they have Barksdale Air Force Base. So a lot of minority children would come in through Barksdale Air Force Base. So then this is what prompted the question. Because we were doing so well academically, one of my, excuse me, English instructors had the audacity to keep us after class one day and called us each individually by name and said, y'all must didn't go to Charlotte Mitchell, did you? And as you probably can tell, I'm very verbose. And so, you've always been taught to respect your adults. So, I didn't yell and get up and hold my crouch or anything like that. I just said, I say, yes, ma'am. I said, so what are you trying to say? Are you trying to say they didn't teach us anything at the black schools? And I said, is that what you're trying to say? Of course, she got really upset. She hit the buzzer, called the office, said I was disturbing her class. Now, if you noticed, I said she held us after class, and the other kids were waiting outside the door to come in. So and with that, man, that just almost ruined my whole senior year because I'd never been in trouble, never been suspended, and I was really upset. And I'll be honest with you, man, I'm still angry because instead of her applauding us for doing well, her whole focus is that we couldn't have been local kids because we weren't supposed to be able to articulate, read, understand, etc. So one day, I'll tell you this, and I'm done. I'm holding my hand up, and she kept ignoring me, and I would not take my hand down. So finally, she goes, What do you want here, Melvin? I say, where are all of these smart people? And I did it on purpose. I'll be honest with you. I said, where are all of these smart people I keep hearing about? Now, it's only there are 31 kids in the class. Only 4 of us are black. And all of these kids supposed to be so smart because they were, quote, white kids. But they were struggling. We were kicking their butts. And I had to ask that question for my own sanity. So when I ask questions about, quote, whiteness or different things that we face and different things we deal with, then I come, and I'm speaking personally, I come from a perspective of life experiences. And to this day, by the way, that was in 1971, I still haven't gotten an answer. So it's things like that a lot of times when people say, well, what do black people want? What do you guys want? Basically, we just want to be left the hell alone. Just let us live. You know, let us live. Let us educate ourselves. Let us get, if we qualify for the job, let us get the job in the whole nine. Don't be worried about what my hair looks like. Now, I'll be the first person to admit to you now, I can understand if you got some guy stepping up in somebody's office, earrings in his ear, tattoos. No, that's inappropriate. I don't care what color you are. So I don't want you to misunderstand me. I understand that part. But even when you have the guy, the pristine guy that walks in, he has a tie on, he has the appropriate jacket on, he speaks eloquently the whole nine. But I'm talking about me now. But he has a mustache.
Right.
That's an issue. What in the hell does that have to do with my brain, with my being
Right.
able to do it? So
Right.
it's
Exactly.
if it's not hair, it's a mustache.
Right.
If it's not a mustache, then I mean, it's just, man, it's always something.
Does he
It's
have
always something.
does he have a good education that fits? Does he have the technical skills and does he have the experience?
Yes,
Then bring him in, let's have a discussion. Can he speak to us? Is he articulate? Does he know what he's talking about?
yes,
There's a good candidate. He's in the top
yes,
4 or 5. And
yes.
we did this one time. We had a job opening a couple of times. I had one guy who applied for each of these jobs. He was a guy from India. He was a nice guy, and he always got in for the interview. He was always in the top 3 or 4 people. He always was getting the interview, never getting the job. Why? So
Okay.
I don't think anything funny was going there. It was just the way everything laid out. But I knew the third job was coming up, and he reached out to me. He said, "Can you give me a pointer or anything?" I said, "Let me talk about it." So I went to the hiring manager. I said, "Have you got your resumes?" He said, "Yeah, yeah." I said, "Have you selected who you're interviewing?" "Yeah, yeah." "Well, who you got?" And he showed me, yeah, this friend, he was there again. So I said, "Do you recognize that name?" He goes, "Yeah, we've interviewed him once before." I said, "Keep in mind, this guy keeps rising into our selection pool. He's that good that he just keeps showing up. So this time when you're looking and talking to him, ask yourself, why should we not hire him?
Yeah.
Can you find one thing to say why you should not hire him?"
Hmm.
So they had the interviews. It's been working with me for 2 years now.
Great, great. That's cool because and I'm gonna say this, and I promise you we're gonna stop because I told you 30 45 minutes. I, you would, and maybe you would, the conversations I've had with young black men that are that become so frustrated and angry, quite frankly. You go in, man, you follow all. They don't have the Fu Manchu mustache like I do. You go in and what we call it tied up. You're tied up and you got you're properly attired and you know your job and you're ready to go. And then somebody looks at you and say, well, just don't think you're fit for the job. How, and I know I'm not asking you for an answer, but it is very difficult many times when you try to explain to young people, what was asked in the interview to make somebody say you're not a fit for the job. You went in, your hair is properly groomed, no tattoos, no earrings. So it just, I'm happy that the Indian guy that you're talking about knew Greg Copicus because many people do not have a liaison, and we go through so much craziness until that's where a lot of the anger comes from. That's where a lot of times people see people of, quote, less melanation and become even more angrier because you know the kind of things that you encounter, and everybody acts as if it's no big deal, and you oh well just get over it and that kind of thing. So that young man is very lucky. I'm gonna use the word blessed if you allow me. That young man is very blessed to know you, sir. And let me say bravo to you, and I mean that sincerely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, listen, I have a lot more things that I honestly feel that you and I probably should do a part 2 and 3 and break some other stuff down. So I'll be talking with you off the air sometime to see if you're interested in doing that, kind sir. But it's certainly been great having you with us, Brother Reg Copicus. And if you will tell our listeners, and by the way, I don't have numbers, but let me tell you, you have a big audience, and thumbs are going up and hearts are going up, and we have a big audience, and we appreciate that. And guys, I noticed you guys didn't ask any questions. So, brother Reg must have did an excellent job. But a lot of times they don't ask questions; they just come in and listen. So, and we appreciate all of our listeners for being here. And if you listen very closely, Mr. Reg Copicus will tell you guys how you might contact him for further discussion or information that you may want to address him specifically. Mr. Copicus, will you share with our guests how they might be able to contact you, sir?
Very simply, if you are on LinkedIn at all, if you go check out this name right here, Reg Copicus on LinkedIn, be linked to this guy right here. If you want to talk about anything about diversity, inclusion, harassment and racism prevention, or leadership, I'm there. Please read my articles. Please look at the posts, and let's have a conversation.
Fantastic. Well, guys, as you know, this is Melvin Lars, the Nobody Asked Me guy. And you can go to my website, www.dyingonmyfeet.com. Once you get there, you will find all of my social media outlets right there. And again, we always encourage you to read our latest book. Our latest book is titled Mothers and Their Men, an introspective look at mothers rearing their sons. And it's a conversation with mothers having sons. We want to give a voice to our moms. And, we're always hearing everybody else talk. So if you get the opportunity, go get that book. You get it from Barnes & Noble, or you can go to my website and you can get the book there. So again, guys, we appreciate you so very much for joining us tonight. We appreciate you so very much for being kind and receiving Mr. Reg Copicus. And we want you guys to go and hit him up, talk with him, invite him in to do workshops, seminars. We want you to support Mr. Copicus. So guys, we want you guys to have a great night, and we want you to stay with us and come back each and every week. And it's been great. The Nobody Asked Me Guy show. Again, Mr. Copicus, thank you very much for being here, sir.
Thank you, Melvin.